We're here at the entrance to what's known as the Upper Room, an important site of pilgrimage for many Christian visitors to Jerusalem. This is the site in Christian tradition where two very important experiences in the life of Jesus and his disciples are remembered. Now, the building itself, you can see behind us here, as it currently exists, is only from about 1,000 years ago. It's a Crusader-era church when the European Christians conquered the land here about 1,000 years ago. It's built on the remains of a Byzantine-era church from about 500 CE. It's 500 years before the Crusades. And underneath that, of course, are the homes and buildings of Second Temple period Jewish Jerusalem, which would be the time of Jesus and his disciples. The two experiences that are associated here with this location, not with this building, but with this location, is the Last Supper before the crucifixion of Jesus, generally believed to have been a Seder, a Passover Seder, and after the crucifixion of Jesus, the Pentecost experience, which is a very important spiritual landmark in the development of Christianity. So over the centuries, this structure was used by many different groups for many different purposes. Originally built as a Crusader church 1,000 years ago, on the base of a Byzantine church, on the base of Second Temple period Jerusalem underneath that. During the Muslim conquest, it also became a mosque. And you can see here a mihrab facing to Mecca for Islamic prayer. Now, even though most of the architecture in the Upper Room is of the Crusader period 1,000 years ago or so, we see some remnants of the earlier Byzantine church that was here. And one of those is this slimmer column here. And you can see a motif above it of a pelican feeding its chicks from itself. You can see the chicks are actually eating from the stomach of the mother. And this was a widespread belief that that's how pelicans fed their chicks, that they sort of gave of themselves. And in early Christianity, this will become a symbol of Jesus sacrificing himself for the redemption of the world. Here we have a modern addition to this Upper Room pilgrimage site. And here we have a concrete expression of a theology. Many Christians see their own Christian identity as intimately intertwined and connected to Jewish identity. After all, Jesus was Jewish, and Jesus taught a Jewish message. And here we can see the idea of Christianity being grafted onto the root being Torah and the Jewish people, and Christianity being grafted on to the root stock of Judaism, the Jewish people, and Torah, creating new leaves with a new faith and a new direction, but deeply rooted in that which came before. The book of Acts describes for us an event here which becomes known as the Pentecost experience. It occurs sometime between the crucifixion of Jesus in around the year 30 and before the destruction of the temple in the year 70. The book of Acts describes the pilgrimage, the Jewish pilgrimage to the temple, to Jerusalem, which occurs on the three major festivals, Passover, Pentecost, and Sukkot, Tabernacle, so Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And this describes what happens here on Pentecost, Shavuot, which is about 50 days after the festival of Passover, after Pesach. Jews from all over the world converge in the tens and maybe even hundreds of thousands on Jerusalem to celebrate the holiday at the temple, which was still standing at this point. And it describes a group of Jews that comes to Jerusalem, and clearly these are Jews who see Jesus or saw Jesus as their rabbi, as their teacher, and they gather together. And as they're gathered together and celebrating Shavuot and celebrating Pentecost, the text tells us that the Holy Spirit, Ruach HaKodesh, descended upon them, and they all began to speak, holy speaking, as this religious ecstasy took a hold of them. Now, there are different interpretations how to understand the text of Acts, which tells us that they all began to speak in different languages. Some understand it very simply. Well, of course, these are Jewish pilgrims coming from all over the world. Each one speaks his own language. Others look at the text and understand that they weren't speaking their own languages, be it Greek, Roman, Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, etc. They were speaking a kind of holy language, and many Christians find tremendous inspiration in that story here, and this idea of speaking in tongues as a very important method and conduit to connect to the divine, which we'll see Christian groups doing today all over the world. And this, to some degree, this rule becomes the mothership, if you will, of the Pentecost and speaking in tongues experience. Now, of course, one of the reasons that Christian tradition identifying Mount Zion as the site of the Last Supper and later the Pentecost experience is because this is also the traditional burial site of King David. And of course, in Christian tradition, Jesus will be a descendant of King David, the once and future king, the messianic king. And down beneath us here is the traditional site of King David's tomb. It's been the traditional site for at least 2,000 years. We're not sure how far back this tradition goes. And today the mountain is shared, sometimes uneasily, between Jewish and Christian groups here, all of whom find spiritual, religious, and historic connections to this place.